Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the solo mode for the Zorro dice game from designers Brian Hank and Clayton Skanke and publisher Pull the Pin Games. The Zorro dice game is a game of dice rolling and that's about it. Let's head over to the table, I'll show you how it plays, then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, here we see the solo setup for the Zorro dice game, and I do want to point out here that you'll need the Zorro Heroes and Villains expansion to play this solo game, but I'm actually not sure if that's true. I'll get more into that later on in my final thoughts, but I do know that the solo rules are only included in the expansion. I'm not exactly sure why you couldn't play the game using this variant out of the regular box, but I'll get to that again, as I said, later. The only thing you have to really consider as far as the components is that there are a couple of equipment cards that have dots here that'll tell you to remove them if you've got less than the number of players that are indicated, so those two cards would go out. So essentially what you're doing on this turn is you are rolling your Zorro dice here. You've got 6 dice with different symbols on them, and you are trying to fulfill the symbols on these heroic feat cards. In the solo game, you shuffle the heroic feat deck and you deal out 9 of them, okay? And what you need to do to win the game is to defeat one of these villains. And if you can defeat a villain, you've won the game, and if you cannot defeat a villain, you lose the game. That's it. So, let's say, for example, I wanted to go here. So on my turn, you choose a location, and now I'm trying to roll those 4 symbols. And it's a Yahtzee-style dice rolling mechanism where you roll the dice, and you can re-roll twice. So let's say that I roll my dice here, and I got 1 of these dash symbols, and I got 2 of these grab symbols. And so now these 3 thrust symbols I have are not good, so I need 2 more chances to roll a dash. So there we go. Got it. Okay, so that card now, that heroic feat has been completed, and now I take this cape into my possession, and it gives me a permanent dash symbol that I can use. And so that's 1 less if I'm going to a heroic feat that has a dash symbol. I have one already in my pocket, so to speak, and I don't have to worry about rolling one of those. So the way that equipment works is you've got common equipment, which are placed underneath all of these heroic feats, and you've got premium equipment, which are now just face down. The only way you can get a premium equipment is by defeating a scoundrel, and I'll explain how that works in a minute. So now I've gotten this concoct a remedy, this red heroic feat done. What you need to do to get these hero dice, which are placed on the scoundrels and villain cards, is you need to defeat 2 of the same color to be able to get that first one, and 3 of the same color to be able to get to the villain, which is the only way you can win the game. So one thing you may notice right off the bat is that the way this was set up, the way this was distributed, the only way that I can win the game is by completing all 3 green cards or all 3 blue cards. Because with the red and the yellow, I cannot even win the game with those. So really the only reason to go to those is to get these equipments that will help you in later rounds. So let's say, just for the sake of example, I go to this second red card. I need 2 leaps and 2 dashes, but I already have a dash, so that's good. I roll those. I got my 2 leaps. I have 1 dash for free, so I get to re-roll all of these. There we go. Got that one. Okay, so now I've completed that. So now what I've done is I now have a cape and a charm, and now these 2 cards have a little spot on them there, kind of to denote. I could take this hero die now, and now that's added to my dice pool every turn. I flip over this top scoundrel, and this is who I would need to face to potentially get a premium equipment. So in this case, I would have to roll 3 of the charm symbols and 1 of the thrust symbols, but it says you may not use hero dice. So that red hero die that I just got, I can't use it on this one. So I get 1 shot at this. You get 1 chance at defeating that. So I roll it, and I actually, this die, yeah, because it's hero, I can't use. So I roll these, and I've got the 1 here. I already have 1 charm that's free to me because of my previous equipment. So I've gotten 2 of those. I get 2 more chances to roll 2 more charms. 1, nothing there. 2, nothing there. So I didn't defeat that. That goes away. I don't get the premium equipment. And these premium equipments are powerful. They're because they're more difficult to get. You get an extra roll before your first roll, set a die to any value. So you can see these are powerful abilities that they would give you. But again, the only way that you can win the solo game is to get 3 of a color. So you would have to continue doing this. And if at any point I was unsuccessful on one of the greens or on one of the blues, I've lost the game. Well, if I was unsuccessful on one of both, because now I've got no chance to get to a villain. So there you go. That's how the solo game plays. Let's head on over and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea on how the solo game for the Zorro dice game goes. The first thing I want to do is talk about some solo benchmarks. These are things I like to discuss when assessing a solo game. The first thing is win conditions. Is it a clear win-loss condition or a beat your high score variant? And in the case of the Zorro dice game, it is a clear win-loss condition. You are having to kind of defeat that big bad villain there at the end. And if you do so, you win. And if you don't, you lose. So that's good in a sense. There are some issues I have with the whole setup of that I'll discuss in a moment. But it is a clear win-loss condition. So that's fine. The second thing I like to talk about is setup and teardown time. And there's very little setup to it. It doesn't take long at all. It's a quick little dice game. And it's a positive that it doesn't take long to get off the shelf and get started to play, and it doesn't take any significant time to put it away, so that's fine. The last thing I like to talk about are the rules, and this was a little bit of a negative for me in a couple of senses. Number one, I felt like there were some ambiguity, some things that were kind of left to the assumption of the player that I wish had been more explicitly laid out in the rule book. There's a couple of examples. One is that the solo game needs to, or is included, the solo rules are included in the expansion, the small box expansion for the game. I'm not sure I understand why those weren't in the original game. It doesn't explicitly say that you have to play with the added components from the expansion to play the solo game. From what I can tell, you could theoretically play these solo rules with just the base box components. The only difference is that you wouldn't have those added scoundrels and villains. And I'm not sure that really matters because the core of the game is the same. You're still having to do these feats to be able to face the scoundrels and the villains, and you have that in the base game. So A, I'm not sure why those rules weren't included in the base game, and B, they don't explicitly tell you that you have to include those added cards, the new way to play where basically the scoundrels and the villain are face down rather than face up. I always played the solo game using the expansion rules, so to speak, where I had the extra cards, except for the couple of cards that were supposed to be removed. But I always played that they were face down, but I really don't know that you need to. And if that's the case, why weren't they just in the base box? Why didn't they explicitly say whether you needed to use the new rules or not? Little things like that. So, the overall solo experience. I had some significant issues with the Zorro dice game. So first of all, I don't necessarily feel like there were any real meaningful decisions to make in the game. There are a lot of games, a lot of dice games built around this Yahtzee mechanic of rolling and re-rolling 2 times. And that's fine. There are actually some quite good games that use that as even a central mechanic. But really, to me, that feels like the only thing you're doing in this game. The mitigation, if you want to call it that, that comes from the equipment cards, I just don't really think that it's enough. It's just not enough for me. So I can get a 1 permanent symbol. Okay, that's great. I can re-roll all of this symbol. Okay. Oftentimes, it still didn't make any real difference. It really came down to, let's hope I get these symbols I want on the dice. There's no real opportunity for clever play, for anything beyond roll and hope. And that's just not going to cut it anymore. There's too many examples of this mechanic being done well. Some other significant problems I have specifically with the solo game is that the way it's designed, you could theoretically lose turn 1. So the idea is that you have these 9 epic feat cards that you lay out at the beginning of the game, and it even says in the rule book that essentially these are your 9 lives. Well, no, they're not. They're not your 9 lives, because to be able to win the game, you have to complete 3 epic feat cards of the same color. And so depending on the distribution of the cards you get out there, let's say even, for example, that you've got 3 green, 3 red, 2 of 2 other colors, blue, yellow, whatever the case may be. Theoretically, you could in that scenario, you can lose on turn 2. You go for the red, where they have 3 different cards, and you fail that first one. Okay, well, now I know I can't get to the villain with red. So then you go to blue, which has another 3 cards, and you fail that first epic feat. You've lost on turn 2. Now, I understand the obvious issue here would be, well, don't go for those first. Don't go for the ones that have 3 first. But then that's taking even more decisions out of your hands. I already feel like you have so few decisions to make in this game. It's basically telling you, save those for last so that you can build up some equipment. To me, that doesn't feel like a strategic consideration. That feels like blatantly obvious. And in a game where really you're just rolling dice and hoping for things to come up, blatantly obvious decisions don't cut it. I really just feel like the solo variant for this game is barely there. It really doesn't, it doesn't give you a satisfying experience at all. The base game itself, I think, doesn't give you a satisfying experience, and the solo game doesn't do anything to change that. I know that this is harsh criticism, but I really do feel like this is a game that doesn't have really anything to offer. You've got so many dice rolling games out there, so many games that allow you to be clever and manipulate dice, and it doesn't even have to be complicated. I'm not even necessarily saying that it's not a good game because it's too light. There are so many good light dice games out there that still give you meaningful decisions to make. This just doesn't have it. It's just not a game that works for me. And for that reason, I'm giving the Zorro dice game a 3 out of 10. I do not recommend this. I just think there are too many good light dice games out there for you to play this one. There's just too many other good ones out there. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.